Sarah, hello. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. Um,
Thank you.
I always like to kind of start right back at the start. I was wondering what some of your very earliest kind of gaming memories and games from your childhood kind of thing.
Yeah, that requires some some memory. I think that the early memories I have are probably on the Game Boy, so when I was pretty young still, and probably on the I think Sega Mega Drive was that was my first console. So I think Game Boy and Sega. So probably Tetris, Mario, Aladdin on Mega Drive was a very early memory of mine. Yeah.
That Aladdin game was great. Like, it didn't
Oh yeah.
it had no right to be that good, like a movie tie-in platformer, but it was great.
Yeah, it was great. It was great. Challenging, but great.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of things were more challenging back then than they are now.
That's actually a good point. You're right. I think you are. Yeah.
But that's the thing though, like things like so I had a Mega Drive was my first one I remember as well, and I think I only saw the end of like the first Sonic game like as an adult because I never reached it as a
Oh,
child.
really?
Yeah.
Well, between you and me, I never mastered the last level from Aladdin, and I tried again like a few years ago because my Sega it's still working. So yeah, I tried again and can't master the last level still. So I don't know. Probably there's something special I don't know about, but yeah, it's I can just go through the last level, but not until the end of the last level. So that's yeah, pretty confusing for me.
Fair, fair. And those Mario Game Boy games are really good as well. I've only quite recently had a look at those. So I got, the Analog Pocket. It's like the new kind of Game Boy
Oh yeah,
type thing you can get, but it's got like a backlit screen and everything. It's so beautiful. But yeah, those Mario games are so good. I don't know why they kind of passed me by at the time. I always really wanted the Wario Land ones in particular, but
yeah,
good
I
stuff.
love the Mario too on N64. That was also a memory of mine, a childhood memory. Yeah.
Nice, nice. Uh, in those kind of early days, who did you use to kind of play games with? Was there like family members or friends that you kind of particularly were taking up your time with?
Yeah, I think my dad actually bought the Game Boy for himself, but eventually it was not his Game Boy anymore. But yeah, so I played a lot with my sister back then. She was the one, doing the instructions. Sorry, that's the English word. Instructions. So just playing alongside me and trying to make me succeed because I was a bit nervous, like when you're driving a car and you're trying I would say to master your nerves in front of other cars doing, you know, crazy stuff on the road. So that's kind of the same thing of, being in front of a game that you can't master very well because you're pretty young. And my young sister, she was there just, trying to calm me down. You're gonna be okay. You're gonna win this game. Don't worry. I'm here for you. So yeah, playing with my sister. Yeah.
Nice. That sounds like quite a supportive relationship. I've got a sister who's a year older than me, and we were a bit more competitive. It was like
Oh, really?
she'd be like setting all of these like Mario Kart time trials that I could never beat, and we'd get.
Competitive is yeah, but she was not that good in video games. She liked to watch, not to play. So yeah.
Nice, nice, perfect. I was also wondering, kind of looking back at kind of those kind of more retro games from your kind of early era of your life. Are there any of those that you would like to kind of bring back to get a modern re-release or remake or anything like that?
Oh, I'd love to work on there was a point and click that I loved called on PC called Goblins with several I goblins. And it was a very, very typical point and click with little goblins and you would, switch from one goblin to the other with different properties and skills and whatever. And it was a great game. And I think they actually did a mobile version a few years ago, but didn't play it. So I don't know if that's just a remaster or if they changed something. But I would like to work on something like that, like a very old point and click. Yeah, I don't know if you played those.
No, I didn't. It sounds interesting though.
Yeah, it's point and clicks are one of my favorite types of games.
Nice. I was also wondering, like, is there one game kind of above all others that you think you've put the most hours of your life into, like the most time spent?
That would be a simulation game, probably. like The Sims, or the kind of sandboxes where you can actually lose a lot of time. So probably The Sims or SimCity, or what was there? This kind of games, endless games, sandboxes, probably, yeah. Or Age of Empires, that was another one, probably, yeah.
Nice. Yeah, good mix there. Yeah, those things that kind of never end. It's like so easy to just
Exactly.
get kind of sucked into them indefinitely.
Exactly.
This is good, especially like let's say when you're younger and don't have a load of money to throw around, like a game that you can spend that much time with is good value.
Absolutely.
And I was wondering, how did you kind of first come to be working in gaming? Because you had a few kind of more indie and experimental things before you came to Ubisoft, right?
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, I come from movies originally. So working on short movies and working as a script doctor on longer movies. So I worked for theater to VR, interactive stuff, like exhibitions, for example. And slowly, as you just saw, I was a gamer, like very early on. So I wanted to write for games too. And eventually I worked on a first mobile game, and then slowly started working on bigger games, and I worked on Beyond Good and Evil 2 at Ubisoft first. Then went on other projects at other studios for a time, and went back to Ubisoft at Ubisoft Bordeaux to work on Mirage.
Nice. What was it like going in on Beyond Good and Evil 2? Because that's one of those that's been in development for a long time. There must be a lot of like information to digest when you go and work on a game like that, right?
Oh, sure, but the same amount of work as when you start working on an Assassin's Creed title. It's a big wide lore, and you have a community that is waiting, eagerly for the next title. So you have like a responsibility. It's the same thing. Yes, on Beyond Good and Evil 2, you have these things to digest, and at the same time you have to work on another title with other characters, so you have to add something to the lore. So it's a balance between adding stuff and respecting the lore.
Cool. And one thing that like is a total kind of mystery to me is like, what does the kind of writing process for a big game like an Assassin's Creed, what does it actually look like? What format is it in? What kind of documents and what kind of
Wow.
how does it work?
Do you have 2 hours ahead of you?
Yes.
So we have different types of documents. We have like a local engine, a house engine that we work on, that is based on a very famous scripts. How do you call that? Like Final Draft, for example. I don't know if you're familiar with Final Draft, but all Celtics, for example. And we have an engine that works with the same base, so we can write dialogues in there. And we have, for branching dialogues, for example, we have something resembling, in the same engine, we have something resembling Twine, as an example. That would be it. So we have, nodes, different nodes with different dialogues, and we have branching dialogues, and yeah, that could be pretty big. But as you know, Ubisoft is not a company that is famous for doing very wide branching dialogues. So we're not, Telltales, for example. So what we do is more, we have branching, but it's not as deep as other companies. So we principally work with these documents that resemble a movie script, to be pretty clear. And we worked on Excel, a lot. That the video game industry in general works on Excel because it's very convenient. It's very, you can still work with different engines starting from Excel. So we do that. We have Miro boards, for example. We work with a lot of inspiration from Miro boards. We have we have different types of documents, but in terms of process, as Ubisoft, typically we have a narrative director. That would be me in the case of Mirage. Then we have lead writers, or one lead writer. For Assassin's Creed games, it's probably a few lead writers and writers after. most of the time because it's big games, so we need several writers. In the case of Mirage, we had 9 writers and with lead writers. And we would typically have different, in Assassin's Creed, different territories in terms of, so for example, on a map, you would have several districts. For Mirage, we have different districts, and we tend to cut these districts in pieces so that the writers can write on a specific moment in the game that is in a specific district. For example, that could be lands, that could be, for Valhalla, for example, it would be much wider territories, but that's how we do it. So we try to give some responsibilities, specific responsibilities to each writer. So they have a specific bit of the story to handle. And yes, the main missions of the narrative director on Assassin's Creed are to define the story, define the characters, define also what we call the narrative means. That means how you're going to convey the story inside the game through the systems, through art, through level design, through quest design. So we have a quest director, for example, and we worked, we work together to achieve that. So it's a very how can you say that? It's a very transversal role, the narrative director role. So yeah, typically it's the main responsibilities, and in terms of process, it's pretty long. Obviously, we have to define the global structure. So in the case of Mirage, we have a pretty I would say mixed structure in terms of narrative. We do have the linear structure from the earlier games. So from the first Assassin's Creed, if you play the first Assassin's Creed games, it's a pretty linear structure. And in Mirage, we have a pretty linear beginning, pretty linear ending. And in the middle, we have this open world that is Baghdad. And we mix the two. So in terms of structure, it's also the narrative director mission to define the structure with the creative director, obviously, and make sure that, the player and the character evolves inside this structure in a compelling way.
Nice. And is it part of your job as well to kind of oversee what everyone else is putting into kind of, I don't know why I want to say the soup that everyone else is, or what everyone else is throwing in, and making sure everyone's on the right page of like tone and this kind of character wouldn't say that kind of thing and stuff?
Yeah,
like
sure, absolutely. So in terms of dialogue writing, for example, so obviously the lead writers and the writers, they all, I would say, answer to the narrative director. So we have discussions, we have rewriting, etc. And of course, it asked for the narrative director to be everywhere in terms of writing, not only in terms of writing, because again, it's very transversal. So you have to collaborate with basically everyone in the team, all the directors and the other team members as much as possible. Very collaborative and iterative. So yeah, it's it's a bunch of missions and a big work.
Nice. So when you first came involved with Mirage, what was kind of that very kind of like nucleus of the idea when you came in? Was from the off it was going to be, we want this to be kind of a smaller world than the previous few Assassin's Creed? Was that kind of preordained? What was kind of...
So yeah, as you may know, the game, so Mirage started as a DLC. For the first weeks, it was the case, and then slowly, actually, what was really compelling for us is the setting. So because we wanted to work with Basim as a character, maybe you know him from Valhalla. So we wanted this character, and we wanted the setting of Baghdad. So slowly, it became pretty obvious that we wanted to do a standalone game and not a DLC anymore. So it started, become bigger, and yeah, we started this adventure this way. So the setting was so compelling. I don't know if you know about Baghdad, or if you ever read about Baghdad before, but most of the time people don't know about Baghdad 9th century. It's kind of a forgotten history, which is really sad. And at some point, working on this, as we were finding new stuff about the setting, the architecture, the historical characters, and everything, it became obvious that we kind of had a an opportunity to show, as in other Assassin's Creed, what was this city in the 9th century, and that people can learn about. And it became some kind of a responsibility, I would say, at some point. And I am, and I know that most of the team is like, I think everyone is proud in every way of what we achieved for this game in terms of historical reconstruction. Yeah.